So what's interesting about this chapter is a lot of people predicted this. I guess I can't really even predict it. It's really just tied it together. I guess it's both of more other taking laid out aspects, and not just of, hey, I feel like this is gonna happen. It's like, I know this is gonna happen. I feel like it's too well pointed up to really happen. And in the last couple chapters, like, it was all even laid out like a little bit extra, and some people caught it. But as this has been going on, they beat Gold. They ended up getting all the iron on her gauntlet, so she wasn't able to use her magnetism. And in that moment, Hinawa just, used that dot on her forehead, pretty much the bullseye, tagged her out. I'm curious if she's dead or not, because we know that he can pretty much manipulate the explosion inside of the bullet, so he can make them both stronger and weaker than a normal shot. I mean, it fully feels like it would be within his capability to just shoot somebody with enough force in the forehead to be able just to knock them unconscious. But with these guys, I don't know why they wouldn't kill them. I mean, it's not like they're taking prisoners. This is just a straight, like, go hard or go home kind of thing. And from that, now Gold has been defeated, and they explain how, Tamaki just going over how, like, they underestimated him. Their teamwork ended up, like, prevailing, because they've got a lot of good combinational things that really tied together in this. And it was that once they figured out, like, her abilities, they just had to figure out, how to counter them, what they needed to do, how they needed to utilize their team in order to do so. And they actually make a good point, because the next dude's name is Stream. He goes over the fact that they don't have skill in fighting alone, because there's a lot of cases when you see, like, the characters in a situation like this where they just get picked off one boy and they're like, oh, you beat this person, I guess it's my turn. And there's obviously reasons, specifically maybe you're in a tournament, or it's specifically like a gauntlet kind of style. But I like the straight raw explanation of it just being, oh no, we don't know how to do that. Like, we'd have no synergy at all. It's not this that we don't feel like grouping would be a thing, or we were protecting pride or whatever it was. No, we don't fight together. We don't have that ability. And then just getting up in his power and this dude's Stream, he pretty much uses, like, uses heat to create, like, grab the air current that is moved within that. And, he's pretty much a wind manipulator at that point. And he ends up, getting his attacks. He's pretty much can throw, like, wind blades and whatnot. And then he's talking about how essentially all these guys specialize in fighting people who have high resistances to heat. Because that's one of the things in Fire Force. Because generally, you have, a fire-based power, and that can, that can branch out from something like Shinra, using fire pretty much as rockets to his feet for kick-style fighting. All the way up to I don't remember the guy's name, but he's in I think he's in the first company, and he uses, like, the kind of like how refrigerators work. He's using heat to create ice, so he's pretty much an ice user at that point with that big kind of like trumpet looking item. But so, when you go against a character in their series that both have these powers, and they're already going to have somewhat of a resistance to heat by being, essentially a fire ability user. And so these guys have pretty much said, we're going to use the heat to not use heat-based abilities. We're going to have something to counteract the people that would rely on these kind of inert, and it just self-developed traits of fire resistance and whatnot. And this guy, throwing all his big gusts of wind around, getting ready. He's getting ready to finally to just, like, finish these guys off. He's much quicker and much more ruthless than Gold was. And in that moment, Arthur actually shows up. And so I talked about before, I don't remember if it was in the last review or if it was in the stream that I did yesterday over this, is the thing about Arthur is Arthur kind of, like, unlike the other main character, or the other kind of, like, rest of the cast for Fire Force, they don't have, like, a lot of tie-in to the characters from Soul Eater. And specifically Soul Eater, there were two characters I think that had really heavy shoes to fill if you kind of compared Fire Force to Soul Eater, that being Death the Kid and Black Star. And out of them, Arthur, you can see similarities that kind of, like, you wouldn't be surprised if, him and Black Star got together and they had, like, hey, we can get along. We got some stuff we can kind of, like, tie together. But Black Star kind of, like, started out as this, like, aim huge, like, kind of like almost like a fantasy kind of, like, laid out with Ballstream's character, and then eventually, like, started to kind of really make ground with what he wanted to become so powerful, and he ended up becoming one of the most powerful characters in the series. And I was wondering what Arthur's kind of, like, layout in the story is, and how he's going to be able to kind of, like, have his own mood to his character, because he's obviously not the main character. He's much more of that kind of, like, rivalry dude. And I'm thinking that given like what we've had, that his is really just going to be the fact that he always takes like situations like seriously to his mindset and never to like the reality of it. But I like this chapter because it was already one of the things that happened is when people notice like, oh, where was he? Where, you know, he wasn't there when they arrived, and you go back in the chapter and you can actually see in the panel, they even show the panel in this chapter where while they're going down the corridor in their cart, that you can see Arthur's leg like off on the you know, on the side, just barely in the panel. And people pointed it out a couple weeks ago when that chapter dropped, which I thought was just really funny. That, you know, it's just that like it's there, but if you pay attention kind of thing, which was really amusing for it to be laid out. And then he just completely demolishes this dude's stream, cuts him down. And he should be dead because his is a lot different than a lot of characters' powers, because his is a straight plasma sword. So if it goes through you, that thing's gonna cut you in half. And so what's interesting also as well is he called his ability as like his technique Violet Flash. And his sword was already blue beforehand. I know Shinra's Super Fire is blue. So I'm wondering if like Violet Flash is literally like it's the color violet, and you have like a purple kind of sword. And on top of that, I'm very curious to know if Okubo is just going to go through all the lines and pretty much give him each lightsaber color, like throughout this, like through the progression of the series, each having maybe its own kind of thing. Maybe just blue is a standard, maybe purple is like speed, and maybe like red will be like extra heat or something, you know, just for fun or something to do with his character. But one of the things people noticed is early in the series, like, you know, him introducing himself and all the stuff, you know, the Night King, Arthur Boyle, you know, he's come to slay a dragon. And really in Fire Force, there aren't dragons, they have the Infernals. You could have like a dragon-like Infernal, but something like that I feel like would be like a big boss character. It wouldn't just be something to be like, hey, I want Arthur to fight this. It would have to be like way late in the game, Arthur, where he's pretty much, you know, he's near his peak, and just give him something absurd to fight. But one of the members of the White Clads, especially the Executioners, was his name is Dragon the Butcher, and he just kind of like just shows up. He sees like members of his crew just dropping like flies, and he's like, "You guys are pathetic." He descends down and gets ready to fight, and he, you know, announces himself as Dragon. And all the other characters are like realizing there's something different about him. They're talking about like, you know, the different presence and power that he gives off. But Arthur is really just excited because he makes it seem like this was all kind of like set up, like he knew this was going to happen. He's even when he was this like, so you were here, Dragon, and it's like you didn't know this guy was here. He's not even a dragon. He's just a dude with the name Dragon. He doesn't seemingly have like a dragon like slit eyes, but it's not the same thing, dude. And then at the end of the chapter, his sword, Excalibur, starts to alter itself, and there isn't a lot kind of like related to what it is in the chapter. I'm wondering if it's going to change shape. Like maybe it won't just be like a straight, you know, thin blade. Maybe it'll turn into something like a broadsword, because he still has more shapes to it. And he has, you know, the cross-shaped hilt. And the next chapter is called End of Prayer. Maybe that'll be the name of his tack. And maybe he'll have like more fire kind of like coming out the sides, and maybe kind of like streaming in and like looping into the main blade and just turning it into like a big like infernal greatsword. I don't know. I feel like that's something that would be really simplistic to add on, but really just kind of, you know, give that boost to his character, like in a fun, significant way, but also, you know, fruits of his training that would just kind of add on to him. And I like where this is going. Like I said, I enjoy the fact that Arthur, he really just stays in character for like his imagination of, you know, being this like powerful knight character, even though he's in a series that like takes place in pretty modern like technology and whereabouts. I mean, he's literally in a firefighter outfit, and you know, he just is so delusional that it will make me sad if he ever like moves past that and like he realizes that it's all, you know, it's like one of those things that's like, man, it'd be cool to see this character evolve past this weird character trait and maybe like, you know, acknowledge this like fantasy they're in. I don't want that with Arthur. I'd rather it just always progress, and he's always in this kind of like thing. What I immediately thought about is it would be kind of sad, because there's that one part where he looks down at his steed and he sees it's pretty much just like a shitty toy, and he looks so saddened by it. He just looks distraught. And it reminds me of what's that movie, Dodgeball, with that guy Pirate Steve. And, you know, the whole chunk of the movie, like the majority of the movie, he's like going off about being a pirate, and then the main character, you know, he's all angry and like a fit of rage. He tells Joe he's not a pirate. So like the next time he sees him, he's like in a suit and tie, and he's like gonna go be like do a desk job. And it was just that crushed spirit that was just so sad about it. And I can see that with Arthur. We got a little bit of it, like I said, when he saw that shitty horse, and he probably realized he looked so silly, and his whole world just started to kind of like decay around him, but he got it back up. So we'll see in the next chapter how it is. I would really hope that, like, if he has like end of prayer, like that's the name of his attack, it would kind of like go something like maybe plunging his sword, like some form of really cool move where he then kind of like elongates his blade, turns into like I said, a big great sword, and then maybe kind of like it's like a downward plunge where it ends kind of like looking like he's got the sword in the stone for the, you know, the whole King Arthur, you know, he became king pulling out Excalibur, and then it's kind of like King when Arthur pulled out Excalibur, became king for Arthur. It's like now he can just pull his hilt up out of the enemy because they're defeated, and then it's just in his mind, you know, he's the king now. It's kind of like a fun maybe kind of scenario for him. But other than that, tell me what you thought about this. Tell me what do you think about like Arthur's progression? I mean, his progression so far has really just been the further like deepening of his own delusions, which I enjoy. But other than that, comment below, thumbs up the video, befriend the like button and the subscribe button, and check out my other videos. But that, I appreciate everyone who's already subscribed, and I thank you all for listening. Bye.